My destination was the Taiyuan Northern Qi Mural Museum, which opened at the end of 2023. It's built on the original site of the tomb of Su Xinxiu, the Prince of Wuan of the Northern Qi dynasty. Before setting off, I had seen many reports and pictures of the museum, but actually seeing it in person still filled me with an indescribable anticipation. After all, seeing murals on a screen and standing in front of the real thing are two completely different experiences. It's like hearing someone describe the taste of a dish versus tasting it yourself. They're two different things. The museum is located in a district of Taiyuan City, not far from the city center. After exiting the subway station, I took a bus, and it was about a 20-minute ride. From a distance, the building wasn't ostentatious. Its gray exterior blended into the northern winter sky. That day, Taiyuan was sunny, but the wind was strong, stinging my cheeks. That's how the northern winter wind is, dry and cold, unlike the damp cold of the south that penetrates to the bone, but it has a sharp, biting force like a knife cutting into the skin. The designers employed a pin-shaped layout, organically combining the three exhibition halls, splendid splendor of the capital, a glimpse of 1,000 years, and simple beauty. The exterior walls have a rugged, rammed earth-like texture, as if just grown from the Loess Plateau, blending seamlessly with the surrounding environment. The upper part, however, is a light, streamlined steel structure, like a scroll about to unfold. This dialogue between tradition and modernity is just like the museum itself, a meeting of millennia-old murals and digital technology. Approaching the entrance, I noticed some abstract patterns on the exterior walls, mimicking the lines of cloud patterns in murals. These details aren't immediately apparent, but when you discover them, there's a knowing joy. The designers have incorporated elements of the murals into the language of the architecture. Security checks are required at the entrance, followed by scanning your ID card to enter. The light in the hall suddenly dims, requiring a few seconds for the eyes to adjust. This is a deliberate design choice, intended to create a tomb atmosphere and protect the light-sensitive millennia-old pigments. A ribbon of light meanders forward on the floor like a time tunnel, guiding visitors deeper into the space. There was a peculiar smell in the air, a mixture of earth, lime, and some kind of chemical agent. It wasn't pleasant, but it gave me the feeling, yes, this is what a museum should smell like. To the left of the lobby was a souvenir shop, and to the right was the service counter. I didn't linger, walking straight along the light strip. The floor was dark gray stone, giving it a solid, weighty feel. The surrounding walls were also dark, with only the display cases and information plaques emitting a soft glow. This atmosphere unconsciously made me slow my pace and lower my voice, as if I had entered a sleeping palace. The first exhibition hall was called The Splendor of a Secondary Capital. The name was excellent. Secondary capital refers to Jinyang. Although the Northern Qi dynasty had Yi City as its capital, Jinyang was its secondary capital, a place where the imperial family frequently resided, second only to Yi City in status. Splendor highlights the magnificence of the murals. The lighting was still dim, but the lights in the display cases perfectly illuminated the precious murals from different tombs. The first thing that caught my eye was a painting titled Horse Riding in the Wind. It comes from the Lu Rui tomb in Taiyuan, depicting a herd of horses and majestic riders. The guide told me that this painting was among the first batch of cultural relics prohibited from being exhibited abroad. I looked closer and noticed that the horses were all in different postures. Some were neighing with their heads held high, some were walking with their heads down, some were listening intently, and some were looking back. What amazed me most were the horses' eyes. No matter what angle I looked at them from, it felt as if the horses were staring at me. The painter achieved this effect with just a few strokes. The position of the pupils, the curvature of the eye sockets, the highlights in the pupils. Everything was perfectly rendered. It was simply a stroke of genius. This technique is called the finishing touch by art historians. It is said that the horses in the Lurue tomb murals are looking at you no matter what angle you look at them from. I tried several angles, and it was indeed so. Even today, this skill is enough to make many painters envious. The traveling scene next to it was equally impressive. The ceremonial procession stretched endlessly, banners fluttering, and parasols like clouds. The lines of the figures' clothing were fine and flowing, a technique known as Chao Yi Chu Shui, Tao Yi Chui. The folds of clothing clinging to the body, as if emerging from water. These lines possessed both power and rhythm, like a silent melody. I stood before the painting for a long time, trying to imagine the artist's state of mind while creating it. He must have been an extremely skilled artist, each stroke decisive and unwavering, the lines flowing like clouds and water, completed in one breath. This confidence came from countless hours of practice, from absolute control of the brush. In the exhibition hall, there's also a painting titled Gatekeepers, depicting two gatekeepers in court attire, holding tablets, their expressions solemn. Their faces exhibited typical Xianbei features: round faces, high cheekbones, and narrow eyes. However, their clothing was Han style, with wide robes and sleeves, leather belts at the waist, and tall official hats. This image of Hu appearance, Han clothing, vividly reflects the ethnic integration of the northern dynasties. I suddenly realized that the Han ethnicity we speak of today is actually a concept of continuous integration. So many ethnic groups throughout history, the Xiongnu, Xinbei, Jie, Dichong, were all integrated in this melting pot. These murals are the most direct evidence of this process. I stopped in front of another display case. It was a painting of a merchant from the Central Asian region leading a camel. In the painting, a man with deep-set eyes and a high nose was leading a Bactrian camel laden with heavy goods, the cargo tightly bound with ropes. The man had curly hair and beard, wore a narrow-sleeved robe, a leather belt, and leather boots. His expression was weary, yet his eyes held a resolute determination. Merchants along this Silk Road brought jewels, spices, and gems from the western regions to the Central Plains, and in turn took silk, porcelain, and tea from the Central Plains to the west. Taiyuan, formerly known as Jinyang, was a crucial node on this trade route. Historical records state that during the Northern Qi dynasty, Jinyang was a veritable international metropolis, a place where merchants gathered and Han and non-Han peoples mingled. The images of non-Han people in these murals are a faithful record of that history. In the first exhibition hall, there is another unmissable exhibit, an array of terracotta figurines unearthed from the Lurue tomb. Dozens of terracotta figurines are arranged in neat rows, including civil officials, military officials, attendants, and musicians, each with a different expression and posture. Some are solemn, some are smiling, and some seem lost in thought. The figurines' clothing also varies. Some wear wide Han-style robes, while others were narrow-sleeved Hu-style clothing. These terracotta figurines were originally funerary objects in the tomb, symbolizing the ceremonial procession of the tomb owner during his lifetime. They stand silently in the display case, like a silent army, guarding the tomb owner's peace across 1,000 years. Passing through a door, you enter the second exhibition hall, a glimpse of 1,000 years. This name is also very meaningful. A single glance is enough to see 1,000 years. The core here is the original site of Su Xinxiu's tomb. This is also the biggest highlight of this museum. The first specialized museum in China built on the original site of a Northern Dynasty's mural tomb. Standing in front of the glass railing and looking down, I see a huge burial pit. The tomb passage extends from south to north, with traces of murals remaining on both sides. At the end of the tomb passage is a corridor, beyond which lies the burial chamber. The entire tomb structure is readily apparent. Tomb passage, corridor, courtyard, and burial chamber, arranged according to the typical form of high-ranking Northern Dynasty's tombs.
可以看一下吗？谢谢。谢谢小朋友，谢谢。
The walls of the tomb passage originally depicted ceremonial guards, but now most are faded and only the outlines of the figures are faintly discernible. However, it is precisely this incompleteness that possesses a unique beauty, like a faded old photograph, evoking a sense of wonder. The tomb's occupant, Su Xinxiu, was the prince of Wuan of the Northern Qi dynasty, holding the official position of Grand Commandant. Originally a border soldier of the Northern Wei dynasty, he rose through the ranks during the chaotic Northern Qi period, eventually becoming a powerful figure. Historical records about Su Xinxiu are scarce, but the scale of this tomb tells us that he must have been a pivotal figure in his time. The tomb passage is 15.2 meters long, and the total area of the murals in the corridor and burial chamber is approximately 330 square meters, which is extremely rare in Northern Qi tombs. When this tomb was discovered in 2000, it caused a sensation. Tomb robbers had already visited it, stealing most of the gold and silver artifacts, but the murals were miraculously preserved. Archaeologists worked for nearly 2 years in the tomb passages and chambers to completely remove the murals. Now, standing before the glass enclosure, I can almost see the archaeologists working, squatting in the passageway, meticulously cleaning the soil with small brushes, bringing the murals, dormant for millennia, back to light. I wasn't satisfied with just looking down. The museum offered VR equipment, which I put on and instantly traveled 1,400 years. This experience was the most breathtaking part of the entire visit. In the virtual world, I slowly descended the tomb passage. On the walls on both sides, orderly ranks of guards stood. They held shields and spears, their ranks impeccable, their expressions solemn. These guards had both Han and non-Han features, and their clothing was also a mix of both. Some wore Shinbei-style hoods, while others wore Han-style robes. Yet, standing together, they appeared perfectly harmonious, as if it were the very place they were meant to be. Entering the passageway, the ceiling was painted with mythical beasts and cloud patterns. The beasts were uniquely shaped, possessing dragon heads, tiger bodies, and bird claws, a combination of various animals. Such beasts were common in Northern Dynasty's tombs, said to be used to ward off evil spirits. On either side of the passageway stood sword-wielding warriors, their eyes blazing with fury, their beards bristling, as if guarding the peace of the tomb's occupant. The warrior's armor was meticulously painted, with layers upon layers of plates, every detail meticulously crafted. Entering the burial chamber, I was awestruck by the sight before me. The chamber had a domed ceiling, painted with a star chart. Between the stars were galloping mythical beasts and dancing fairies. The lines of the beasts were exaggerated and powerful, the fairies' robes flowing and lifelike. The entire dome gave a sense of vastness and immensity. As if the soul of the tomb's occupant was wandering the starry sky. The four walls of the tomb chamber are adorned with large murals, the most prominent being the famous banquet scene. The tomb's occupant, Su Xianxiu, and his wife sit serenely beneath a curtain. Food and wine vessels are laid out before them, flanked by musicians and attendants. Su Xianxiu wears a scholar's cap and a red court robe, his face serene. His wife wore the lotus crown and a blue ruchuan, a type of traditional Chinese dress, her bearing dignified. The two sit side by side, their expressions exuding composure and tranquility. A musician is playing a curved neck pipa. This type of pipa differs from the common pipa of today. Its neck is curved, and its soundbox is pear-shaped. Introduced from the western regions, it later became a core instrument of Tang Dynasty banquet music. Another musician is playing a billy, a reed pipe instrument whose mournful sound is like weeping. Behind the orchestra are dancers, twirling and leaping, their robes fluttering. The dancers' postures are vivid, one foot on the ground, the other raised, arms outstretched, as if spinning rapidly. What fascinates me most are the details. The tomb owner's clothing was decorated with a beaded pattern, a typical motif of the Sasanian Persian dynasty, composed of small, linked beads. The wine vessel held by the attendant was a Central Asian bottle, adorned with exquisite relief carvings. The food served at the banquet included flatbread, mutton, as well as Han-style soups and rice dishes. This tomb chamber was a miniature world, witnessing the exchange and fusion of Eastern and Western cultures during the Northern Dynasty's period. I spent a long time in the VR world, walking around in the tomb chamber, viewing the murals from different angles. The feeling was magical. I was clearly standing in the museum lobby, wearing VR glasses, yet visually I was in a 1,400-year-old tomb. Technology allowed me to bridge the gap of time and have a face-to-face dialogue with the ancients. The third exhibition hall was called Simple Beauty, inspired by the painting style of Yang Zihua, the Northern Qi dynasty's master painter. Yang Zihua was the most famous painter of the Northern Qi dynasty. According to the record of famous paintings through the ages, his horses were so lifelike that the sound of hooves could be heard at night. His dragons were depicted with clouds rising with their scales, and his figures were vividly lifelike. Unfortunately, none of his original works have survived, but murals in northern Qi tombs are considered to be direct descendants of Yang Zihua's style. This exhibition hall showcases murals from other northern Qi tombs, including the Jiuangang tomb in Xinzhou and the Shuiquanliang tomb in Shuazhou. Although these murals come from different tombs, they share a unified style: simple and powerful lines, accurate and vivid forms, and bright and elegant colors. This embodies the characteristics of simple yet beautiful, using the simplest lines to express the most beautiful images. A painting titled Ascension to Heaven occupies an entire wall. This painting from the Zhuanggang tomb is currently the most complete and vivid ascension to heaven seen discovered in a Northern Dynasty's tomb in China. In the painting, deities such as the wind god, thunder god, and rain master move through the clouds. The wind god's pockets are bulging with wind. The thunder god holds a drum as if striking it, and the rain god rides on a dragon's back, pouring water from a jug. These figures incorporate elements of traditional Chinese mythology, as well as Buddhist and Western region art styles. The lines of the mythical beasts are exaggerated and powerful, and the cloud patterns are fluid and ever-changing. Standing before it, I seem to hear the sounds of wind, thunder, and rain, and feel the magnificent imagination of the Northern Dynasty's people about the afterlife. They believe that after death, people do not disappear, but ascend to heaven. The soul, guided by the gods, flies to the stars, to eternity. This imagination is so rich and vivid that it still moves us 1,400 years later. There's also an interactive projection wall in the exhibition hall. Children are playing the musical instruments in the murals. They pluck the virtual strings of a pipa, and the musicians in the murals come alive, producing corresponding musical notes. A 7 or 8-year-old girl is playing the pipa, her fingers sliding across the wall, and musicians in the murals also play, producing a clear and melodious sound. The little girl's mother clapped and cheered, while the little girl herself beamed with joy. This exhibition method, combining technology with cultural relics, made the thousand-year-old murals no longer cold and impersonal, but rather audible, tangible, and perceptible. For the children, this was not just a visit, but an unforgettable experience. Perhaps many years later, when they are adults, they will still remember that afternoon. In the Taiyuan Northern Qi Mural Museum, they personally played a pipa from 1,400 years ago. In a corner of the exhibition hall, there's also a metaverse experience area. Wearing VR equipment, one can not only enter the tomb chamber, but even pick up the artifacts in the display cases. I picked up a gold-inlaid jade ring there, examining its craftsmanship details from 360 degrees in the virtual space. This ring was unearthed from the tomb of Su Xianxiu. Tomb robbers overlooked it, and it was discovered by archaeologists in a corner of the tomb chamber. The ring is inlaid with a gemstone, engraved with patterns in the Western region style. Its exquisite craftsmanship is difficult to replicate even today. Leaving the third exhibition hall, I returned to the main hall. There was a cafe in the hall. I ordered a latte and sat by the window.
抱歉。
对，前面呢，我们看到一个，对，那也是一只卫士龟头做到的一个西。这个不是在国一个马眼大长头回的头发，你看见它长翅膀，对，嘴中衔老虎，肋上生双翅，有着卡姿兰的大眼睛。有人认为它是这样可御刀兵，防止战争的响应。的就是嘴里有个老虎。对，它是这种来自于《山海经》当中的古人。非常的巨大的一只，类似于天马的形象。前方呢是雷公，左右手呢不难把小竹子敲击声13面。古人认为呢，这个雷的变奏是小竹子。
Outside the window was the museum courtyard, with several pine trees, still adorned with patches of snow. Sunlight streamed in through the glass windows, warm and inviting. I thought of the short-lived Northern Qi dynasty. In 28 years, 6 emperors rose and fell, none meeting a peaceful end. Gao Cheng was assassinated. Gao Yang died of alcoholism. Gao Yin died in a fall from his horse. Gao Zhan died suddenly of illness. Gao Wei was captured and executed, and Gao Hong was killed. Palace coups, fratricide, and distrust between ruler and subject were the main themes of this dynasty. Yet, in such an era filled with violence and bloodshed, such exquisite and serene art emerged.
等一等。
Perhaps it was the cruelty of reality that led the people of the northern dynasties to pour their yearning for peace and beauty into their tomb murals. They believed that death was not the end, but the beginning of another life. So they painted feasts, journeys, music, dance, and hunts on the tomb walls. Everything they enjoyed in life, and the world they longed for in death. These paintings were their weapons against death, their gifts to eternity. 1,400 years have passed. The dynasty has long since vanished, and the tomb's occupant has turned to dust. Only these murals remain, telling the story of that distant era to people today with their still vibrant colors and vivid lines. And I, an ordinary visitor, in just a few hours of time travel, had a silent dialogue with the painters of 1,000 years ago. With his brushstrokes, he told me, "Look, this is our life, our faith, our beauty. This is perhaps the meaning of a museum. It is not a tomb for artifacts, but a bridge across time. It allows people from different eras to meet and let silent artifacts speak."
Mm.
就是你，因为我现在不从这儿买，我从这儿。